It's taking a while to develop Diablo Immortal, but how out of the norm is it? Diablo Immortal was announced at the 2018 BlizzCon. We already know that was a premature announcement. The game was not really ready to be announced at that point in time, but realistically, Blizzard didn't have a Diablo announcement, so they probably pushed that one to the front of the line. Of course, no one was happy about it. We know that whole story. But really, 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, let's say 3 years, maybe 3.5 years of development for Diablo Immortal. Is that a long time for a game? And is that a long time for a mobile game? Now, a few things that we have to define here. First of all, Diablo Immortal is not being built like a mobile game. As you guys can see, Clash of Clans, which is one of the most popular mobile games of all time, took 6 months of development for their initial build. That was only Town Halls 1 through Town Hall 8. There was no clan war leagues. The game was basically a shell of what it is today. And over the past 10 years or so, it's been made into more and more of a game. With that being said, even Clash of Clans, in its current state today, with all the depth that it has, is nowhere near what Diablo Immortal is in its alpha state. There's just so much more of a game there, so in my opinion, we really can't compare the development of Diablo Immortal to really any other mobile games out there right now, because nothing has the depth. So the question is, what do we compare it to? What is comparable to Diablo Immortal? And there's really nothing better than to compare it to Diablo 2 and to Diablo 3. So Diablo 2, let's start right there. Now, obviously this was built many years ago, and it was built on PC. Diablo 2 took 3 years to develop, from start to finish, approximately, because you never really know when the actual start date was. It was a 3-year development. Now, when we look at Diablo 2 and compare that to Diablo Immortal, Diablo Immortal has much more going on. There are much more things you could do inside of Diablo Immortal. There's much more depth in terms of what needs to be developed. Now, we also need to remember that technology has come a long way since then, and games in general are more complex than they were when they were built back when Diablo 2 was created. But as a reference right here, now we are comparing a PC game of like 30 years ago to a mobile game of today, which really is a much heavier game when you think about it with the time difference there. It was a 3-year development for Diablo 2, and right now we're probably sitting at 3 to 3.5 years for Diablo Immortal. My anticipation is it's going to be out within its 4th year. So before it hits 4 years, we should be seeing Diablo Immortal. Again, my prediction on that is late November. Now let's compare to Diablo 3, which was announced in June 28th of 2008. Now, we know when it was announced. Now, it was probably some development going on before that, but it was released on May 15th of 2012. That's 4 years of development from when we know that the game was beginning to be developed, and that's for the initial build of Diablo 3, again, on PC. So, 4 years development for Diablo 3, we're looking at 3.5 to 4 years development for Diablo Immortal, 3 years of development for Diablo 2, and 6 months of development for Clash of Clans. The point that I'm trying to make here is that Diablo Immortal cannot be compared to other mobile games. It has too much complexity, too much depth, and is much more evenly compared to games that have already been produced on PC and on consoles. So with this being said, is Diablo Immortal actually taking too long to develop, or was it announced too early, or maybe a combination of both? Well, one thing that we have established that we know for sure is that Diablo Immortal was announced too early. It should have been waiting, they should have waited until at least 2019 as I died. I'm glad I highlighted my death for you guys. If Diablo Immortal was announced in 2019, it would have been 1 year less of anticipation. We would have probably had a little bit of word about Diablo 4. It would have been a completely different story on announcement day. Probably a lot less hate would have been thrown. But again, Blizzard had their reasons for sharing it. Who knows if everyone agreed if it should have been shared at that time or not. Either which way, we can't change the past because it was. But at the end of the day, if Diablo Immortal, in my opinion, takes approximately 4 years to develop on mobile devices, I think it's okay, and I don't think that it's really overstretched. Now, let's put two things into account that made this more difficult. One, is COVID. COVID came through, and I'm not trying to make the COVID excuse. Really, now everyone knows how to work from home. That workflow is established and people are back to work from home or back to work in the offices. But at the beginning of COVID, things were crazy for all businesses, including Blizzard. People were getting set up at homes, and they really were probably set back quite a few months of development of this game because of COVID itself. If I had to guess, the development team of Blizzard would have thought that Diablo Immortal would have been out at this point in time. I highly doubt that they thought they would still be developing Diablo Immortal at this point in time. Now, one other point is that has really never been brought up before is the input methods, right? They've built Diablo 1, they've built Diablo 2, they've built Diablo 3, they've built World of Warcraft, they've built Overwatch, they've built tons of games, Blizzard has. All of them built on PC, ported to console, nothing really made for mobile. Hearthstone was made on PC and then brought over to mobile, which actually plays really well on mobile. But Diablo Immortal is the first game actually being built for mobile. So with that being said, Blizzard has to learn new input methods. They have to learn how to make virtual joysticks, virtual controls, because they've never made them before. And maybe NetEase is helping them along the way with some of the stuff that they've learned and that they know from the mobile space. Very well could be. But this is something that they are not used to, they being Blizzard. And from the technical alpha, we were not allowed to use external things like controllers or any of that. They really wanted us to test the virtual controls. It was a huge concern of theirs, and it was something that they put a lot of focus on. Now, looking back, listening to a lot of the other creators that were really focused on Diablo 3, that were testing Diablo Immortal, everyone really liked the virtual controls, the controls on the phone or the tablet. So with that being said, Blizzard had a huge success in creating Diablo Immortal on mobile as far as the controls go, which was a huge feat for them, something that they, again, haven't done before, and had it to be worked into the workflow, something additional that they wouldn't have had to deal with if they would have made the game on PC, because those controls were already established, already made, already coded, and just needed to be tweaked. So the question is a 4-year development time for a mobile game, but one as deep and complex as Diablo Immortal, too long? Maybe it was just announced too soon. What I definitely know is that I am willing to wait for as perfect of a game as possible, but something we also need to remember, however Diablo Immortal launches, whatever state it's in, whether you love it, whether you hate it, or whether it's in between, they are going to continuously fix, update, and bring more features to the game, and it's always going to be changing, just like Clash of Clans, which only launched with Town Hall 1 through 8, and now has up to Town Hall 14 with Clan War Leagues, with a Night Village implemented as well, and that are now in esports. How far they've come from their 6 months of development, throwing the game on the market and quickly taking the market by storm, making a ton of money. So now, putting aside your desire to play, because we're all feeling it, we all want to play it today, we don't want to wait, but putting that aside, forgetting that we're all getting impatient, including myself, how do you feel? Do you actually think that this long for this game is out of line, is out of reach with COVID, with the new control inputs, and just really being their first go at mobile, trying to make it as perfect as possible? Let me know what you think below, and if you want to see more Diablo Immortal videos, let me know that down below as well with a more Diablo Immortal comment. Either which way, you know I'm bringing you more. But guys, while you're down there, hit sub and ring the bell if you enjoy the video that you just watched, and if you like hanging out with me, and if you are in love with Diablo Immortal. I'll be back with a video tomorrow, so that notification that you just clicked, yeah, that bell you just clicked, it's gonna remind you, and you should come right away so you don't miss it. Have a great day, guys, and be good.